Hey everybody, it's EJ here, and today I'm going to be curating MDC. That's right, I'm going to be taking over a little bit today, and I guess I should just apologize in advance. Alright, so I wanted to share some quick tips with you to help you navigate unwieldy scenes like we have right here. Number one, I'm using redshift lights, and when you're using third-party renderer lights, sometimes the light illumination is not accurately represented in your viewport. As you can see here, everything's just kind of really blown out. So one way to quickly fix this without having to go into each individual light and adjusting the illumination adjustment here, what I can do is just go to display and just go to quick shading, and that will remove all the lighting. And this is fine because you'll see the lighting in your live viewer, your render view. So at least this will be able to help you see things in your viewport. Now, as far as selecting objects and trying to find them in the object manager, one very quick way to be able to reveal an object that you have selected in your viewport and reveal it in your object manager is to hit the S key when your cursor is over your object manager. And what that's going to do is scroll to first active. You can see there's my water bottle, and now I can easily select that and adjust any of the options on that. So again, that is scroll to first active, and you can see that's in my view menu as well. So if I select this right here, you can see that it's actually hidden under this hierarchy. If I hit S, that's going to automatically untwirl that hierarchy down, and I can actually reveal that object right there. So my one last tip is for easily selecting objects that might be hard to select because there's a lot of objects kind of overlapping one another, and that is to hold the control or command key down, and if I right click, you'll see that I am going to get this drop down listing all the objects that are underneath my cursor at that point that I held the command or control key down and right clicked. So you can see that I can release my control or command key and just select this wavy, and you'll see that if I hit S to scroll to first active, there is this wavy object right here. And if I turn off my cloner there, I can see that I selected that object right there. So you can actually select objects within a generator, like this cube. You can see right there. I can command or control right click over here, and you can see this full list of all these objects that are underneath my cursor at that given point. So really easy way to be able to select any objects underneath your cursor, even though it's hidden from your viewport view. I love adding squash and stretch to characters, and using the skin deformer, you can actually add that kind of ability within the skin deformer itself. So here I have a character. If I want this to be like squash and stretch, you can see that we're really not getting that squash and stretch. But if I go to the skin deformer and go to this length and adjust this to volume scale, what this is going to allow for us to do is that when this bone right here gets bigger or smaller, it's actually going to try to maintain that mesh's volume. And you can see that now we're kind of getting this kind of squash and stretch here. Especially if you really stretch this out, we're getting really stretchy and really squashy and kind of melting almost. But it's trying to maintain that volume. So I can make this pug like very squishy, and you can see that he's just kind of, really getting flabby there. And just to show what this looks like without this volume scale, just change it to none, you can see that big difference there. Now, one more example is just using a simple sphere. So here I have a sphere. It is just using two joints, and I have an IK chain here and a goal. And if I move this up and down, you can see that this goal is not adjusting this bone length. So if I go to my IK tag and twirl down this squash and stretch and just crank both of these up, what this is going to allow us to do is squash and stretch that bone. So you can see that now that bone is kind of scaling up and down, but it's not affecting our mesh at all. And that's because we need to go into the skin deformer and again adjust this length. And we can say, hey, maintain that volume scale. And now I can select on this joint and just squash and stretch this sphere. And this is just really, really handy. You can also go in, and in the skin deformer, right now it's just using linear, but if I change this to blended, we can kind of have a little bit more control over how this squash and stretch, how that volume scale is working. So you can see that if I really squash this down and go back into the skin deformer, you can see we can kind of tone back on how squash and stretchy it can be. And you can even use a vertex map to control that kind of volume scale. So I'll just drag and drop this vertex map. And now you can see that the squash is really happening where that vertex map strength is about 0. And if I go and adjust this blending, you can see what kind of squash and stretch we have now with that vertex map controlling that squash and stretch.